This is CBN NewsWatch.
And thanks for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. We begin with Iran's efforts to build nuclear weapons and the possibility of a new nuclear agreement. The most recent development, as CBN's Chris Mitchell reports, is Iran's denial of a request to include Saudi Arabia in the negotiations.
President Macron warns that time is growing short to keep Iran from getting a nuclear weapon. Iran says it's reaching its goal of producing 20% enriched uranium faster than expected. 20% is one step away from weapons-grade uranium.
We were supposed to produce 120 kilograms of 20% uranium annually, but now, in less than 1 month, we haven't reached about 17 kilograms, which is even ahead of our timetable.
While the Biden administration says it wants to negotiate a stronger, better nuclear deal, Iran and its ally Turkey refuse that offer. Iran wants to use its leverage to drop the economic sanctions.
I should emphasize this. America was the one who withdrew from the JCPOA and breached its commitments. Now it's America that should return to the JCPOA and fulfill its commitments.
It also set a February 21st deadline for the EU signatories to drop sanctions, or it will cut off access for UN nuclear inspectors and increase uranium enrichment. The Biden administration is considering naming Robert Malley as its envoy to the nuclear negotiations. Critics like Senator Tom Cotton said the choice of Malley would send the wrong signal to Iran. He tweeted, "It's deeply troubling that President Biden would consider appointing Rob Malley to direct Iran policy. Malley has a long track record of sympathy for the Iranian regime and animus towards Israel. The Ayatollahs wouldn't believe their luck if he is selected." In the meantime, Israel is watching closely. And on Sunday, Israeli Defense Minister Benny Gantz told an Egyptian TV station it's keeping open its military option to stop Iran's nuclear program. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. China recently imposed a sweeping new security law tightening its grip on Hong Kong. Christians, politicians, and pro-democracy activists are being arrested. George Thomas shows us how the church in Hong Kong is responding.
Hong Kong, as Hong Kongers see it, is a totally different place than it was 2 years ago.
Pastor Butch Tanner moved here from Texas in 2017 to lead Kowloon International Baptist Church. Then, in June 2019, anti-government protests erupted over a controversial extradition law, plunging the city into months of chaos and bloodshed. Tanner's church became a place for healing.
We would have actually police officers, plus we would have protesters that would gather in our building and pray together and sing together.
The protests have since died down, but fear now looms over the city's future as China's grip on Hong Kong tightens 6 months after imposing a sweeping new national security law.
We have a lot of fear in Hong Kong among the people. There's a lot of fear that things are not going to settle down or be anywhere near the normal that they used to be.
And that fear is being realized. On January 6th, more than 1,000 Hong Kong police officers raided 73 different locations across the city, arresting 53 politicians, pro-democracy leaders, human rights activists, and others. Lam Chung-ting was one of the lawmakers arrested. He captured the moment police barged into his home.
You are suspected of violating the national security law, subverting state power.
Chris Patten, Hong Kong's last governor, says what's happening in the city is nothing short of China's brutal destruction of a free society.
This is a further turning of the screw in Hong Kong, a further attempt to destroy the freedoms of a city which has thrived under the rule of law.
Also arrested, John Clancy, an American priest turned lawyer, who now faces prison for challenging China's authoritarian rule over the city. Authorities have also rounded up Christians, including Joshua Wong, a prominent activist seen in this picture entering prison in early December. Later that month, 2 Catholic nuns were also arrested.
If they think they can actually lock up the idea of freedom and democracy forever, they're kidding themselves. The truth is they're absolutely terrified of what liberal democracies stand for.
Reports estimate more than 300,000 Hong Kongers are planning to flee the city in coming months.
George joins me now for more on the story. George, several pastors have already left the city. Others have gone underground. Yeah. Now the UK is offering residents a fast-track citizenship opportunity. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, in fact, the UK just announced that anybody born in Hong Kong prior to when the UK handed Hong Kong back to China, this is in 1997, will be granted UK citizenship. They can travel to the UK for 5 years, get a 5-year visa, and then have a path to citizenship. That's huge because that's close to about 5 million people under this opportunity. So Hong Kong, the UK is preparing for hundreds of thousands of Hong Kongers to move from their beloved city and move to the UK.
Wow. What's the atmosphere in Hong Kong like right now as residents realize maybe for the first time that their city is going to look a lot different under Chinese rule?
Yeah, you have to put it into context here, Wendy, for your viewers. The understanding back in 1997 was that that China would handle Hong Kong as one government, one country, two systems. And that was supposed to be a 50-year agreement from 1997 to 2047. That was the idea. Well, guess what? Last year, the Chinese Beijing decided that they didn't like that idea. They were not going to wait till 2047. They stepped in with this controversial new sweeping security law, and things have dramatically changed. In fact, Hong Kongers that I've spoken to say they feel like Hong Kong today is like any other city in China, which is not good for religious freedom, freedom of speech, the economy, and greater overall freedom in the city.
Yeah, as you just mentioned, the state of religious freedom in China, not great. Yeah. Will that same level of restrictions that we see in China be in store for Hong Kong?
That is the big fear amongst Christians that I have spoken to. Look, Hong Kong was a gateway into China, into the region. It had this freedom, this one country, two system of governance. There was so much freedom in the city since 1997. Christians clearly feel the screws are tightening. They are changing almost every day. Schools that had no influence of communist propaganda. Today, the teachers are being replaced by those who swear allegiance to Beijing. So clearly, there is an undercurrent that's taking place. It's changing. The U.S. government is noticing, as well as Christians in the region, very much afraid about what's going to happen next.
And George, I know you've been to Hong Kong. You've met with Christians there. Do you think that they see persecution now as inevitable?
They do. And in some ways, you know, they're taking a page out of their brothers and sisters on the mainland. This idea that for 70 plus years, you know, the Chinese believers endured so much persecution. They knew what it meant to suffer, and they saw their brothers and sisters on the island suffer. And today, the Hong Kong believers that I've spoken to say, listen, we need to take a page from our brothers and sisters in China, learn from their suffering. How did they survive after 70 years of persecution? Can we learn something? And it's interesting because of the COVID restrictions, you know, churches are no longer meeting like we are for the most part, no longer meeting in buildings. They're meeting in smaller groups all across the city. And so in some ways, they are somewhat prepared for what is to come. And it really is very disheartening to see what's happening today in Hong Kong.
It really is. Our prayers go out to them. George Thomas, thank you so much for that report.
You're welcome.
With the latest now in the battle against COVID-19, China announcing plans to provide 10 million vaccines to developing nations at risk of running out by March. In Europe, UK-based drug maker GlaxoSmithKline and Germany's CureVac say they plan to collaborate to develop new vaccines that can target emerging variants of COVID. The announcement comes as public health experts raise concerns about mutations in the virus that may make existing vaccines less effective. Well, murder rates were up nationwide in 2020 to historic levels. And get this, one report says there's a link, even a direct connection to those figures and the effects of the pandemic. Charlene Aaron breaks down the numbers from U.S. cities big and small.
The study looked at crime rates in 34 cities ranging in size from New York to Norfolk, Virginia. In addition to the significant spike in homicides, researchers found how the pandemic may have contributed to the uptick in violence. While 2020 will be remembered for deaths due to COVID-19, this report also found an increase of 1,268 homicides over the year before. Statistics in urban areas tell an even bigger story. In Milwaukee, the total increased by 85%. Seattle saw a 63% rise, New York City 43%, and in Chicago, a city known for shootings, there were 278 more murders in 2020, an increase of 55%. While other crimes, such as stolen cars and assaults, rose as well, the report takes a close look at the connection between the homicide increase and the pandemic. It points to stress caused by isolation and extreme social restrictions, combined with economic loss and fear of death as possible factors.
We see even the healthiest of individuals with unlimited resources to coping strategies who are struggling.
Dr. Danny Holland of Regent University's School of Psychology leads the Institute for Violence Research. He says those stressors could lead people to violence and even murder.
Definitely could. It could push somebody over the edge. I think somebody who has a propensity for aggression or somebody who has a tendency to be aggressive in other different ways may go that direction.
Still, COVID isn't the only reason behind the increase. Extreme violence racked many cities following the police-related deaths of George Floyd and other African Americans. Criminologists also cite increased gang violence and a surge in gun ownership. Filmmaker Dimas Salaberios recently looked at the impact of surging violence in his film, Chicago, America's Hidden War, which is under Oscar consideration. He describes its devastation on communities, particularly children.
We were walking through the streets. We asked for the addresses of the most dangerous blocks in Chicago. And we remember we met this little kid, his name was Quincy, who was sleeping under his bed. He said his house had bullet holes in it. He's seen bullets fly everywhere. We talked to another kid who was around 9 years old. He said, I watched in front of my face my cousin get beat up and shot twice and killed. Then the killer came back and shot him again. He said, I can never forget these things.
Salaberios says the church can make a difference.
This film shows guns being turned into pastors, people being baptized and quitting gangs.
Wow.
The church is the answer, and we can bring the homicides down, but we got to stay out there.
Meanwhile, experts say given these findings, it's crucial we get the pandemic under control. Then law enforcement, the church, and community leaders can work on ways to bring people together to stem violence across America. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Thanks, Charlene. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who died from injuries sustained in the January 6th invasion at the Capitol, is remembered today by lawmakers and fellow officers. His body was taken from the Capitol after lying in honor there since last night. Sicknick, who was also a member of the National Guard, was buried at Arlington Cemetery. Among those paying their respects, the President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill. Well, the National Prayer Breakfast is tomorrow morning and will be virtual this time. President Joe Biden is among the speakers following a long line of presidents all the way back to Dwight Eisenhower. Event co-chair Chris Coons is calling on Christians to set the example and pray for our nation and our leaders, even for those we may not agree with.
How do we come together as the body of Christ? It's by being reminded that these divisions that attach to particular spending bills or political priorities are temporary. They will pass away. Jesus Christ did not, in his Gospels, lay out a particular political agenda. He was clearly neither a Republican nor a Democrat.
And you can watch the prayer breakfast tomorrow morning at cbnnews.com beginning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Still ahead on Newswatch, we take a look at the vital role of chaplains in the U.S. military. Plus, President Biden talks faith in his first interview as president. But coming up next, Twitter censors focus on the family. Another sign, social attacks on conservative and Christian freedom of speech and religion.
Sex before you marry is a bad idea. Don't tell me there's no such thing as gun violence.
That just depends on your definition of when life begins.
Watch Dan and Dale tackle trending topics that test your faith on the next Faith Wire, Monday night at 9:30. The Global Lane takes you around the world, providing facts over fiction.
What might rising trade and geopolitical tensions mean for you on the home front?
With over 45 years of experience, award-winning journalist Gary Lane brings you the truth from a global angle.
What about the issue of immigration?
World news analysis you won't see anywhere else.
And it's all right here on The Global Lane.
Watch The Global Lane, Thursday night at 9:30.
Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Twitter censors focus on the family once again, giving conservatives and Christians more evidence of discrimination. Our Heather Sells talked with the ministry's president, Jim Daly, about what happened.
Have you had any dialogue with Twitter over this? Any clarity on their problem with your wording?
Well, I wished we could get clarity. That's one of the things we've been hoping for. Of course, they banned that tweet. They basically suspended the account. They told us if we took it down, we'd be allowed to begin posting again. But, you know, out of principle, we felt like we were simply stating the fact. We honestly were not mean-spirited or hateful in any way. We were just trying to state exactly what the Biden administration had lauded as an appointment, this person who is transgendered. I think there's an assumption in the culture, especially in the elite culture, that everybody understands what that means. And the simple fact is that's not true. Some people that don't deal with LGBT issues don't understand what that means. So we simply stated it, that Dr. Levine is born a biological man, and that is he's a man who believes he's a woman. Somehow they said that was hateful speech. It was insightful against the transgendered community. And that's the problem. We were stating simply a fact. And, you know, the spirit for us is one of Christ. We want to be loving and kind. We know that Jesus loves everybody, and that's the Christian position. At the same time, we got to speak truth. We've got to be able to express what it is we believe.
Right. As you go forward, what does this mean, especially with respect to your social media posts on transgender issues?
Well, we asked them to clarify how would they prefer that we state that fact, and we have not heard back from them. It's been probably 8 or 9 days now, so we're still unable to, post new material there. People can read what was already up there, but we're hoping at some point we get some clarification. My concern is they're unwilling to state that because they too then could be canceled. If they recommend to us, we would prefer the word identifies over believes, whatever it might be. They're not willing to do it. It appears at this point. They won't give us any coaching or direction on how they would like that statement of fact to be said.
Really fascinating. Well, as you know, there has been an explosion in the number of pediatric transgender clinics in this country. There's concern that healthcare professionals must provide medical interventions for any child that questions their gender, and that also that parents don't have the ability to object. What are your thoughts on this trend and this new world that we're living in?
Well, it breaks my heart, really, because there's so much evidence, and I've talked to people on the APA panel on gender dysphoria, et cetera. That's the American Psychological Association. And one of the things in the research is children can be sexually confused in their orientation, in their identity, et cetera. But typically, research is showing that about 70 to 80% of 19-year-olds will self-correct in that identity or gender dysphoria issue. Think of that. So morally, what we're doing now as a nation is locking these children into a destiny that unfortunately, I think, will find real depression at the other end. I think ironically and tragically, what's going to happen is as 20-somethings who were forced in some ways because of their inability to think through the circumstances they're in. That 11-year-old, 12-year-old, when they become 22, 23, the increase in suicide and depression, et cetera, I think will spike. And the question will be whether or not they'll have access to legal course to sue those school counselors, those school districts, those doctors that push their parents out of the discussion and, in fact, entice them basically as a 12, 13, 14-year-old to get this hormone treatment, et cetera. I think that's what the courts are going to need to look at, a class action suit of those 20-somethings that had this done to them in their teens, and now they're looking for some kind of compensation.
Complicated issues there. Well, Jim Daly, president with Focus on the Family, thanks for your time.
Good to be with you, Heather.
Thank you.
Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new CBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new CBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new CBN app.
On the home front.
Thanks for joining us for CBN's On the Home Front, where we highlight what the men and women of America's military do to defend our country. CBN honors the men and women in our military with an initiative called Helping the Home Front. It partners with churches across the country to meet the needs of their military families, from repairing homes to wiping out medical bills for wounded veterans.
Watch On the Home Front today at 2:30.
Too often, we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
Today is Military Chaplain Day, a time to honor chaplains for all the work they do for the men and women of the U.S. Armed Forces and their families. Joining us now to talk about it is Gordon Grosclose. He is a retired Army chaplain and American Bible Society Armed Services Ministry Director. Gordon, welcome to Newswatch.
Thanks, Wendy. It's good to be here on a very somber day for chaplains. It's a day of reflection, and for some of us, a day of recommitment.
Absolutely. Well, please tell us why this day is so important to you and for all chaplains.
78 years ago, in the middle of World War II, a convoy left to go to Greenland to bring supplies and reinforcements for air bases there. The Dorchester was one of those ships that fought a heavy storm and enemy activity, and just hours away from air cover, they would drive away the U-boats. In the middle of the night, 1 o'clock, 3 torpedoes would slam into the Dorchester. And in those few short minutes, a third of the crew would die from the explosions and the flooding of the lower decks. Soon, hundreds of men would be rushing to the top of the ship, to the open decks, for lifeboats in the hope of safety. But also on the Dorchester were 4 chaplains, 4 Army chaplains that represented 2 Protestant chaplains who were on board, Chaplain Fox, Chaplain Poling, a rabbi, a Roman Catholic priest, Chaplain Washington, Rabbi Chaplain Good. And with some amazement, witnesses told how they went among the crew members to give them a sense of calm in the midst of this chaos and destructions. And they began handing out life preservers. And when the life preservers ran out, to realize that many of them still did not have their own, these chaplains took off their own life preservers, took off their gloves, and gave those out to the personnel.
Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. Tell us, chaplains have come under fire in recent years for actually doing their jobs and talking about their faith. What's happening with that?
Yeah, so today there's 5,000 chaplains represent all the major services to take care of our 2,000 military. We have the great privilege to represent the First Amendment rights, the free exercise of faith. We're not there for our faith, we're there to support them. So the great privilege that chaplains have, their constitutional privilege, to ensure that their service members have the ability to practice their faith. And we're there to do that. And sometimes it's difficult. And chaplains learn to be faithful and to take care of those that they love.
Well, Gordon, we just want to thank you so much for all your service, for all the chaplains. So many wonderful stories that I'm sure we'd love to hear, but don't have time. Thank you once again. God bless you, and God bless our nation's chaplains.
Thank you, Wendy.
We'll be right back.
Are you suffering from feeling tired or worn out during the day? Can you not turn off your brain at night? You are not alone. Hi, I'm Dr. Michael Bruce, the sleep doctor, and I've partnered with the Christian Broadcasting Network, and we're gonna bring you some unbelievable information that you can use tonight to get a better night's rest.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com to get your free copy of Protect Your Sleep today.
Nutrition, exercise, essential oils, weight loss, and more. It's Healthy Living with Lori Johnson.
Talk about what's in this.
Join CBN health reporter Lori Johnson to get the latest information from today's top health experts.
This is fantastic.
Find out what you need to know to live a healthier life. Watch Healthy Living, Tuesday night at 9:30.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Finally, today, President Joe Biden and his wife Jill gave their first interview since moving into the White House to People magazine. They talked about the challenges for America and about marriage and family. And when it comes to faith, Biden said, quote, "I don't want to proselytize. My religion, for me, is a safe place. I never miss Mass because I can be alone. Other people may meditate. For me, prayer gives me hope. It centers me." Another reminder for all of us to pray for our president and all of our leaders. That's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Until next time, from all of us here, have a great day. God bless.